They worked very hard to learn this song. It was very nice. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. No, you get full credit. Good morning, everyone. I just saw today, somebody sent me a WhatsApp thing, that today is Swami Atmajnananandaji's birthday. And it was because I read an article, it was actually one of his talks on this topic, that I decided to give this talk today. So it's a nice coincidence. Anyhow, the topic is A Stranger in a Strange Land. And again, by coincidence, this is the title of a novel that was written in 1961 by an American author named Robert Heinlein, who I never heard of. It was a very, very popular and influential book. How many people read it? Okay. I never read it, so I won't talk about it. But I know the basic story, that there was someone by the name of Valentine Michael Smith, who was a human being, but somehow was born on the planet of Mars and was raised by Martians and then came to Earth. And apparently it has a lot of spiritual or religious significance to it in the book, and also symbolic things and everything. But the real reason I chose this topic is that there's also a reference to the song that we just heard, which the Monocholo Nije Niketoni, which has tremendous significance for us within the Ramakrishna Vedanta movement, because it was the song that Swamiji sang for Sri Ramakrishna, which really got everything started. So I want to really talk about that, the importance of this song and the significance of it in spiritual life. And bear with me. And I want to start by going through the history of it, give a little background on how Swamiji came to Sri Ramakrishna and how he came to sing this song. So now, in our own minds, we'll go to Dakshineshwar and picture ourselves being in Sri Ramakrishna's room. It wasn't the first time that Narendra, later Swamiji of course, that Narendra met Sri Ramakrishna. He had gone probably around November in 1881 to see him for the first time. The disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, one of his disciples, Surendranath Mitra, who was very, very devoted to Sri Ramakrishna, great devotee, very generous also. He had a little function at his house and invited Sri Ramakrishna and the devotees there. And I think the person who was supposed to sing didn't come for some reason. Anyhow, they knew that there was this young boy named Narendra, who was a member of the Brahmo Samaj, who could sing very well. So they invited him to come, and he sang some songs. So Sri Ramakrishna saw him, and he saw Sri Ramakrishna. Now, nothing very dramatic took place that time. So we can only guess that Thakur saw him and thought, oh, the fine young man, something like that, and said, please come to Dakshineshwar. And Swamiji Narendra himself saw Sri Ramakrishna and thought, oh, this is an unusual person. Anyhow, sometime later, he went with some friends to see Sri Ramakrishna. Now, this is a little bit side topic, but we have so many different stories about why and how Narendra went to see Sri Ramakrishna. Did anybody ever think about that? Just by chance, I read an article that I think 4 different views. One was with Professor Hasty, that he took over the class one day and they were talking about Wordsworth, and he said, if you want to see somebody who's had this ecstasy, go to Dakshineshwar. And then some say that Ramchandra, his kind of distant cousin, said that he should go. And then others feel that it was through the Brahmo Samaj, because they spoke about him and wrote about him, that he should go. And anyhow, the other versions, we don't know exactly why or how. But all of them, there could be some truth to all of them. Which one was the determining factor, we don't know. Yeah, I think they're all true. they're all true, but who gets the most credit? Professor Hasty or Ram or Keshav, others, we don't know. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. But we find that probably after this, Sri Ramakrishna had that vision. He had the vision of Narendra as one of the Saptarishis, one of the 7 sages. He must have had it then because when Swamiji went to see him in Dakshineshwar, Sri Ramakrishna recognized him at that time, which he generally did. Those who were his chosen disciples, his antarangas, the inner circle, very often he would have some vision ahead of time or some premonition or something, or he would recognize them when they came. So this clearly happened at this time. Now, there's an account of this first meeting by Sri Ramakrishna and also an account by Narendra. So I thought I would read them because it's interesting to hear in their own words. Of course, they're English translations, but to hear their own first impression of each other. So this is the account that we find first in the different biographies of Swamiji and Sri Ramakrishna. Narendra entered this room by the western door. He seemed careless about his body and dress. So this is Thakur's words, translated, of course. Narendra entered this room by the western door. He seemed careless about his body and dress, and unlike other people, unmindful of the external world. His eyes bespoke an introspective mind, as if some part of it were always concentrated upon something within. I was surprised to find such a spiritual soul coming from the material atmosphere of Calcutta. Thakur used to make fun of people from Calcutta all the time. A mat was spread on the floor. He sat on it just near the place where you now see the big jar containing the water of the Ganga. And just as another interesting side point, this is also where Thakur performed Shodashi Puja. Yeah, just if you know where the door is, and that I guess it's the northwestern corner, and that side, that's the same place. The friends with whom he had come appeared to be ordinary young men with the usual tendencies toward enjoyment. He, Narendra, sang a few Bengali songs at my request. One of them was a common song of the Brahmo Samaj. So this is the song that we heard sung. It was written by somebody named Ayodhyanath Prakashi. I don't know who he was. Pakrashi? Okay. Oh, I wrote Prakashi. Okay, Pakrashi, like the harmonium. Yeah, okay. And for those of you who didn't get into, I don't know where our translation came from. Probably, but I'll read the translation that we have in the book because it's so nice. I just looked at it. Oh, my mind. Many of these songs will find the devotee addresses the song to his own mind or his own heart. So, oh mind, go back to your own abode. Why wander aimlessly like a stranger in this foreign land of samsara? The objects of the 5 senses and the mortal beings are not your kind, not your own. Being in love with those who are not yours, why forget the one who is your own? Regain the path of truth, O mind. Light the flame of love and go forward. Let piety be your only provision. Hide it carefully. Greed, delusion, and other robbers wait on the way to snatch everything away from you, O traveler. Keep close the 2 watchmen, equanimity and self-control. If you get tired, stop for rest at the inn called Holy Company. If you are lost, ask the residents of the inn to show you the right way. If something frightens you on this journey, appeal to the king with all your might. The king is ruler of this road. Even death must bow down at his command. So this is the song that Swamiji sang, Narendra, sang for Sri Ramakrishna at this first meeting in Dakshineshwar, the actual second time they saw each other, first meeting in Dakshineshwar. Then Sri Ramakrishna continues, he sang the song with his whole heart, and put such pathos in it that I could no longer control myself, but fell into an ecstatic mood. Then he took leave. Now, we're missing a whole big portion that Swamiji will fill in. But after that, I felt such a constant, agonizing desire to see him. At times, the pain would be so excruciating that I felt as if my heart were being squeezed like a wet towel. Then I could no longer check myself. I ran to the northern quarter of the garden, a rather unfrequented place, and there cried at the top of my voice, "Oh, my darling, come to me. I cannot live without seeing you." After some time, I felt better. This state of things continued for 6 months. There were other boys who also came here. I felt greatly drawn toward some of them, but nothing like the way I was attracted toward Narendra. So this is all from Thakur side. Now, what about Swamiji? Narendra, too, was profoundly moved at his first visit to the Master. He told some of his friends of it later, though with some reserve. Now, these are Swamiji's words. "Well, I sang the song, but shortly after, he suddenly rose and, taking me by the hand, led me to the northern veranda, shutting the door behind him. It was locked from the outside, so we were alone. I thought he would give me some private instructions, but to my utter surprise, he began to shed profuse tears of joy as he held my hand, and addressing me most tenderly, as one long familiar to him, said, 'Ah, you come so late. How could you be so unkind as to keep me waiting so long? My ears are well nigh burnt in listening to the profane talk of worldly people. Oh, how I yearn to unburden my mind to one who can appreciate my innermost experience.' Thus he went on amid sobs. The next moment he stood before me with folded hands and began to address me." Now, this is where I have some problem with the translation. This is Nara Rupi Narayana. But anyhow, "Lord, I know that you are that ancient sage Nara, the incarnation of Narayana." Other way of understanding is the Lord himself come in human form, born on earth to remove the miseries of mankind, and so on. So Swamiji just said, and so on. He didn't explain anything else that happened after that. So this is just the setting of all of this, so we understand the significance of the song and why Sri Ramakrishna was so moved, because the song is full of this intense feeling of renunciation and dispassion, vairagya, detachment, really tremendously powerful song. So this is what I want to speak about, this idea of alienation in spiritual life, because this is really what it is. And when we go back to the book, he was an alien. We use this term for people from a different planet, even. So this feeling of alienation, which has a meaning in psychology as well as an existential or spiritual meaning, and from the spiritual point of view, to look at the importance of this feeling of alienation, which generally we'll think of as something very negative. But if we look at all the different songs that are written, so the different hymns, we'll look at some of these, Bhaja Govindam and others, we see it's filled with this idea that no one belongs to us, no one is our own, that we're strangers in this world, full of these different types of ideas. So from a spiritual point of view, there's a great importance to this type of feeling that somehow we don't belong here. Somehow this is not our real home, that we're strangers here, that somehow even we don't feel at home in our own skin. It's a funny feeling. When we first get it, we may think there's something wrong, but it's actually a very good thing because it's actually true. So this is what I want to call an existential or spiritual alienation. And the message that we get here and some of the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna are very, very strong and a little bitter also. And the reason is that, and Thakur says, that this disease of worldliness has become chronic. And unless we have some very strong, bitter medicine, that we won't get cured of this type of disease. Now, one footnote here before we get too carried away with the glories of alienation, there is a very dark side to alienation, which we know. This psychological side is a very great problem. It affects many people, especially during the teenage years. This feeling that they're excluded, isolated. So a very serious thing, which really should be taken not in any light type of manner, because it can even lead to suicide in very extreme cases. So we should understand that we're not promoting this type of feeling of alienation. It's something very, very different. And we should also be very careful that we don't alienate other people, that we don't exclude other people, make them feel that they don't belong, that somehow they're different or somehow they're foreign to us. But this feeling, even what I'll call social alienation, is something which is very common. And I think almost everybody will go through this period to a certain extent, especially, and this is the bad news, during the teenage years. This is the time when no one feels very secure and very comfortable, and everybody wants to belong to the in-group, this and that. And it can be a very lonely period for many people. And the funny thing is that we always feel that we're excluded and everybody else is in the in-group. I'll tell you an interesting story. There was one of the students when I was in high school who was kind of a friend. I liked him. We were on friendly terms. A very nice person. And he was quarterback on the football team and very popular, very nice, good person, a good student, everything. His name, I'll tell you his name just for fun, Kenny Nallinger, because he was actually from an Armenian family. Now, generally we knew that if your name ended in IAN, it was Armenian, but it didn't. But we knew his father used to come to the football games and spoke with a heavy accent, and they looked a little bit different and everything. But still, we always thought that he is one of the popular kids. He is really the in crowd. Then a few years ago, one of my close friends went to a high school student reunion and happened to meet him and talk to him. And he said the most interesting thing. He said, I always thought you were the in crowd, and I always felt like an outsider. We were always a little different. The family was a little different. My father was a little different. I didn't know for Armenian for anything in those days. And I thought they were all, they were all the big shots, athletes, that didn't matter. But it turned out that he had went through the same feeling that we're a little bit outsiders, this little alienation feeling. And we thought just the opposite. We were the ones, and that he was part of that in-group. So it's a very common thing. Everybody will go through it. And as I say, it can be a very lonely and difficult period. If we know we're all in the same boat, it makes things a little bit easier. But the spiritual or existential alienation that I want to talk about is something different. For one thing, if it's existential, that means that it comes with our very birth. It's part of what it means to exist, to have this feeling that we don't know exactly where we came from, where we're going, why we were born, what our purpose in life is. We find ourselves here in this world. We don't know how did it happen? We're here in such a strange world that what do we hold on to? How we don't know why exactly. So there's some very common existential element to this that makes us feel somehow that we're just passing through. We don't know. There's nothing permanent. That it's just kind of almost exiled here. The same feelings that we get when we read the songs like this, when we hear songs like this, that this is not our real home, that we're strangers here somehow. We don't really belong. We're here for a very short time, and we don't know exactly why. Now, Sri Ramakrishna gives many illustrations about this not being our real home. My favorite, I'll give a very nice one, then I'll give the one that I really dislike. The nice one is the maidservant. in the rich man's home because she doesn't really feel too much sadness about it, but she knows that that house is not her house. It belongs to the master. And she knows the children are not really her children. They have their own mother and father. She's just looking after them. So she'll speak in those terms. My Hari did this, my Shivu did this and that. And we bought a new dining room table for the house, and we painted, we did all of this, our house. But she knows it's not her house. She has her own place in the village, her own family, husband and children and all of that. So we find two things about the maidservant. One is that she realizes that none of that really belongs to her, that the people who she may speak of as her very own are not her very own. But second thing is that she does have her own. She has her own home, she has her own children, she has her own everything in the village there. So this is one very nice illustration. There's also a second beautiful Bengali song, one of my favorite songs. It's Bhebi Dakmon Keo Karunoi Miche Brahmo Bhumandale. Thakur used to sing this song. He liked it very much. It was a beautiful song. Remember this, O mind. Nobody is your own. Vain is your wandering in this world. The same idea. Trapped in the subtle snare of Maya as you are, do not forget the mother's name. Only a day or two people honor you on earth as Lord and Master. All too soon that form, so honored now, must need be cast away. When death, the Master, seizes you, this is addressed to a man, even your beloved wife, for whom, while yet you live, will not go with you there. She too will say farewell and shun your corpse as an evil thing. Now, I'll tell you this story. Actually, there are two stories that Thakur tells. They're terrible stories. And one is even worse. I won't tell the really terrible one. I'll tell the one that's a little bit milder. The Guru was trying to explain to the disciple that no one is your very own. God alone is your very own. And the disciple said, but my wife, my children, my mother, my father, they all love me. They'll do anything for me. And he says, okay, let's do a little experiment. He said, I'm going to give you some pill to take. And you'll take this pill, and within an hour or so, you'll have all signs of death in the body, but you'll be aware of everything. You'll be able to see and hear everything that's going on, but it'll look to everybody else as if you've died. So he goes home and takes the pill, and that happens exactly like that. And everybody is weeping and wailing at home. At that moment, the Guru comes in disguise and knocks on the door and says, oh, everyone is weeping and wailing. What happened? So they explained. The mother says, well, son just died. That for no reason, he was perfectly healthy. We don't know what happened. What will we do now? Small children, all of that. So the man came and he said, oh, this is very sad, but I know a way to bring him back to life. I have a certain medicine that I can give him that he'll come back to life. So they were so happy. And then he said, but one thing, one of you will also have to take it, but it'll have the reverse effect. The person who takes the medicine will die, and the son will live. So all of a sudden it's, okay. And then the Guru said, now I know you all love him so much that one of you will gladly do it. So he asked the father, and the father says, yes, I could do it. I want my son to live, but who will earn money to look after the family if I'm gone? I have to think about that. Then the mother also said the same thing. Then his wife said, but there are small children. Who will raise the small children? So one by one, they all said, yes, well, we would do anything for him to come back to life, but we won't go that far. Now, in the meantime, the medicine wore off, and the disciple regained consciousness and came up and everything, and he said, so now I see that no one is really my own but God, and left the family and went off with the Guru. It's a terrible story, huh? And we all feel that, no, there are people who would even give up their life for me. Huh? And I think it's true. But we have to look at the point of all of this, that this is all meant for us to break this type of attachment. I mentioned before Bhaja Govindam. Bhaja Govindam is a beautiful hymn written by Shankaracharya. And many people say they hear the title, Worship Lord Krishna Bhaja Govindam, that this is a devotional hymn. It is not a devotional hymn. It is full of vairagya, full of detachment, full of renunciation, full of this same type of idea. I want to just read two of the many verses that bring in this feeling of spiritual alienation. Yavat vitto parjana sakta tavat niji parivaro rakta paschat jivati jar jara dehe vartam kopi na pritchati gehe ma kuru dhana jana yovana garvam hariti nimesha kala sarvam maya mayamidam akhilam hitva brahma padam tvam pravisha viditva. As long as this is, again, addressed to the breadwinner, the man. As long as you're paying the bills, your family will be very pleased with you. Once you become old and feeble and can't look after yourself, no one will even bother to ask, how are you? They'll just push you aside. Give up your pride in wealth, friends, youth, good looks, etc. Time, the great destroyer, will remove each and every one of them in the twinkle of an eye. Understand all this to be Maya and renounce them all, striving to realize your true nature as a Brahmin. So, as I say, this is very bitter medicine. It may seem to go too far to the other side, but our attachment is so strong that it is meant to try to break that. So this feeling of alienation, this feeling that nothing belongs to us, we don't belong here, has this very important role to play. Now there's an in-between type, I'll say half kind of social and half spiritual, which is also a kind of nice thing. And that's when, after seriously getting involved in spiritual life and spiritual practice, we find that we don't feel at home anymore with our old acquaintances, even sometimes family members. That they'll seem like strangers to us, and devotees will feel like our very own. That the biological bond will no longer play any special role, that we'll go to parties that we used to go to with old friends, and there'll be chit-chatting and drinking and eating and all of these things, and we'll just feel like we have to escape, that we don't belong there, that we're strangers. This is also a good type of alienation, but at the same time, it has that positive side that we go with the holy company, with other devotees, we feel very much at home. No alienation there. We feel like with our very own people. Interesting, this happened to Sri Ramakrishna himself. When he was a boy in Kamarpukur, he had a bunch of friends. They were very close friends. They would play with each other constantly. They would go to the mango grove. They would put on plays and performances. He would teach them all of their roles and everything. And he said that one of the friends came many years later to see him at Dakshineshwar. And he said, I saw he was just such a worldly person, I could hardly look at him. So the one who was so close to before, that now was like a stranger to him, and these young boys who started coming, how he longed to be with them. Now, before we jump off of a bridge, after hearing all of this, that nobody is our very own, that there's no purpose to life, all of that, there's a very positive side to all of this. This goes back, of course, to the second part of the maidservant idea, that we do have our own home. We may be strangers here, but we, as the song says, that we should go back to our own abode, that there is a place, whether we want to say a physical place or emotional place, whatever, within the heart, that is our real home. And this stranger's guise, what is that? Even this physical body, that we're spiritual beings, but yet we seem to be trapped in this body. So, We also have our real home in God, somehow, and our real being and existence in the divine. So this is that second side, the other side of this equation. So whatever feeling of sadness we may have, that the whole part of our life is no longer of interest to us, our old life, that we seem that we have lost something, these are old friends and everything, that is equally compensated for, overcompensated for by the new life, by the holy company we have, by spiritual companionship, by this understanding that this feeling of alienation has some spiritual basis to it, that we really don't belong here, that we really shouldn't feel comfortable identifying with this body and mind, that we have a spiritual aspect to our being which is essential to us, and this is the non-essential part. Now we're told the story of the maidservant as a kind of challenge to us, because Thakur says that she never forgets, even while she's saying that this is my Hari, this is my Ram, she never forgets that she has her place in the village, and she has her own children. So this is also a prompting for us to practice this constant recollection of our real nature, and what we're striving to go back to return to our real home. So what do we mean by our own abode? On the one hand, we can say that we've come out of Brahman, we'll go back to Brahman. This in-between portion, Thakur likes to say, is 2 days. That means it's very short, it's very fleeting. We put so much emphasis on this short time that we spend in this world, when we see that day by day it's going by. And the older we get, the faster it goes. When we're young, we think, till my next birthday, it'll take about 100 years when we're little kids. But then we get older, we see one after another, it just goes by faster and faster and faster. That why be so attached to this? That we've come from that infinite absolute reality, that's our true nature, we'll go back one day to that same reality. This is one way of understanding it. The other is that our own abode means our own true nature, not a question of how long we live on this earth. Here and now, returning to our own abode means realizing that, yes, I am divine, I am the self, I am one with that infinite reality, with that Brahman, or establishing a relationship with God, that I'm a child of the Divine Mother, that this is also my real nature. So returning to our own abode has that meaning also. And when we can fix the mind and constantly remember our own abode, our own true nature, that's where we live. We're told to dwell within that abode. Wherever the mind is, that's where we are. If we're talking about a table in the room, wherever the table is, that's where the table is. If we're talking about a person is not where a person is sitting in the room. A person is where the person's mind is. Huh? So we'll even say a student in a classroom, where were you? The person is daydreaming. Where were you just now? Oh yeah, I was remembering this, or my friend, we went there to the playground, this and that. So that's where we live, where the mind is. There's a verse from the Gita, this is chapter 12. Some of you are learning this chapter 12. It's a very beautiful verse. Mayeva mana adhatsva, maye buddhim niveshayet, nivashisyasi, mayeva at udvam nasamshayaha, nivasishyasi. You will dwell there. If you fix your mind on me, you establish your intellect in me, constantly remember me, then you'll be living in me. From this moment onward. So how long will it take? It doesn't take any time. If we fix the mind on God, that's where we dwell. There's no doubt about it. Sri Krishna is saying this very definitely. So fix your mind on me, place your intellect on me, and you will dwell in me from this moment onward. There can be no doubt about this. So we have these two meanings. Returning to our own abode equally means remembering our true nature, as well as this idea this world is fleeting, we'll go back to that Brahman nature. But it also means remembering our true nature, remembering that all of our worldly relationships are temporary. We may say yes, that our dear ones, they do love us. They are willing to sacrifice for us. But how long will this last? These relationships, there's nothing permanent about it. Our relationship to the divine is the one that's permanent and unchanging. So living in God can take this devotional point of view that, yes, I'm always thinking of this personal aspect of God, feeling myself to be a child of the divine, or from a philosophical point of view, constantly remembering that I am unborn, I am undying, I am one with that infinite supreme Brahman. And this stranger's guise, as I said before, is this very physical body. That somehow we find ourselves in this body, and I don't know about you, but sometimes you look in the mirror, you see this person staring back at you, who is this person? Huh? Is that me? This is what other people see when they look at me. I'm not that person. There was this story, incident, Swami Vivekananda, I think in Pasadena, at the Swamiji house. We have, that's one of our centers now. You can go there. That they saw Swamiji standing in front of the mirror, walking back and forth and looking at it, and the devotee there was thinking to herself, he also has his ego and pride, wants to see how he looks. And then she heard him say something like, who is this person? What is this body that I'm looking at? This is not me, I'm not that. So then she understood. So this physical body itself is part of this whole Maya, that this is not our own abode. This is the stranger's guise, that we're dressed up in this funny outfit, which is this human body, living in this strange land, which is the earth. This is the story we have. Do I have time? I've told this story several times, but I love this story. It's from a movie called Cocoon. Anybody seen this movie, Cocoon? It's about aliens, again aliens, huh? That they come to Earth and they dress up like human beings, of course, so nobody knows that they're aliens. They're some other planet, of course. And there's one scene where the very pretty young alien, very pretty, and there's one young earthling kind of falls in love with her and is watching her without her knowing it. She's about to go to bed, and she takes off her dress, and she takes off her slip, and then she unzips her body and takes off her body. Yeah. So inside is some little green thing and everything. Yeah. Now, if we could do that, because when we go to sleep, what do? When we go to sleep, we could easily take off the body and hang it up in the closet. Right? Then we dream, we zip up another body, an imagined body, and we go. But we don't do that, so we have this kind of identification. But it's the same thing with us, that in this waking state, we feel that somehow this is a very permanent thing. If we could unzip it, hang it up, or even, because one day we'll get a new one. We'll get a new one that we'll wear for a short time, then we'll get rid of it, get a new one. This is life after life after life. So when we put that on, she understood, she was the alien, she understood that this was a stranger's guise. Huh? It was a stranger. But we think that it's something permanent for us. So if we identify with this body, that means we're not identifying with that inner self, that unborn, undying, eternal Atman. So these songs like this are also meant to remind us of the temporary nature of the world and our real home on the other. So the lesson, what is the lesson here? That we're trying to increase our feeling of detachment, increase our feeling of reliance on God. No one is our own, God alone is our own. This feeling of surrender, eliminate our desire for worldly satisfaction, intensify this longing and feeling to go home, to return to our own home. This means God realization. This vyakulata, this tremendous longing, as if we're children who got lost. A small child at the mall loses the mother, screaming and bitterly weeping and everything, the tremendous desire to go back home, to find the mother and to return to the home. That this is meant to increase this type of longing for all of this. Now, the funny thing is that this type of alienation, because it's universal, is a unifying factor, that we all are in the same boat here. This is a common feature that we can all be hand in hand together on this island of exile, trying to find our way back home. So it has that element to it, which that social type of alienation doesn't. Now, if we still are having a little trouble with the negative side to all of this, and find the whole thing a little bit depressing, then there's good news. Because this train that goes to this alienation and negativity and all of that, it comes back in a very positive way. And we find that there's a corollary to all of this, that no one is our own, the other side, no one is a stranger. Now we have a Holy Mother who comes into the picture, right? That how do we square these two things together? That this teaching, no one is your own, God alone is your very own. And this other one that says, learn to make the whole world your own, no one is a stranger. The Holy Mother's wonderful teaching. Now, I will try to explain this in terms of something which Swami Krishna calls anulom vilom. In the English translation, they say the path of negation followed by the path of affirmation. And Swami Krishna uses this technique in different ways. He'll do it with this idea of neti neti. What is my true nature? What is the nature of Brahman? We separate everything else. So it's a very negative thing. Na iti, na iti. It's a very negative thing that anything that's changing, it cannot be Brahman. Anything composite cannot be Brahman. Anything that can be an object of my awareness cannot be Brahman. This body cannot be Brahman. This mind, this ego sense, all of that is external. None of that is Brahman. External physical universe, nothing of that is Brahman. We discard all of that till we get to the roof, and then we look down and we see that everything is a manifestation of Brahman. Everything becomes a very positive thing. We have the two songs that Thakur used to refer to. That one, this Ram Prasad song, says that this whole universe is a framework of illusion, only Maya. And Thakur said, yes, this is true, but I like the other one better. This world is a mansion of mirth. But we start with one because we have to get that type of detachment. We can't get attached to God unless we let go. We have to have that detachment first before we can get that real attachment to God that we need. So, in order to eliminate this element of Maya, this attachment to the world, Thakur uses this term Maya as not just some philosophical idea, but this Maya is what keeps us attached to the world. This Maya is what makes us distinguish those who are close to us and those who are distant from us, those who we feel are our very own, those who we feel to be strangers. This is all due to Maya. So we emphasize this feeling of not belonging, of being strangers, even to our near and dear ones, just to break that attachment. Not that we should be cold, and not that we should feel that our loved ones don't love us and we don't love them. It's not meant for that. It's meant to break that individual attachment so we can have that same feeling for everyone. So Sri Ramakrishna says that Maya, this love of our own near and dear ones, this attachment, is a good thing, but a limited thing. He doesn't say that it's bad, we shouldn't love anybody. But if we want to love everybody, we can't do it unless we break that attachment to the particular. If we want to love the universal, we have to get rid of this particular thing. So we have to love our near and dear ones without that type of attachment, without expectation, so that we can love everyone equally. Of course, we will never love everyone equally, but at least extend it, this feeling of daya, this feeling of love and compassion for others. So we emphasize this alienation, feeling of not belonging, until we can attain to this state of detachment, longing for God, feeling that God is our very own. Once we're established in that mood, then we can feel our oneness with everyone. We can feel all to be our very own. We can feel the whole world to be our own. Make no distinction between ourselves and anybody else. Then we really become universal people. We don't look at any of these superficial external things. We see that divine presence within all. This is a much higher state. This will almost be the difference between the state of jnana and the state of vijnana. The vijnani will have this feeling. Jnana, the state of knowledge from Sri Ramakrishna's point of view, can be, yes, that God alone is my very own, that every temporary relationship, everything is Maya, that type of idea. The higher point of view is that we see that we embrace everyone, we accept everyone. So this feeling of Daya, as opposed to Maya, requires us to develop a little bit of this type of detachment, and this almost feeling of alienation that we find in these different songs and these different hymns. So this is not the final state. If we want to develop this feeling that no one belongs to us, that we're alone, we're isolated, that we have to go back, we should understand that this is a preliminary, but necessary. It's a preliminary to that full-blown feeling that, yes, everything is my own. That feeling that we belong anywhere. We can go within any group of people and feel them to be our own. This is really the goal that we're doing. So it's during these earlier periods when we need to fence this small tree around, that we protect ourselves from this attachment with this feeling that God alone is my very own. Afterwards, the tree grows big, huge trunk. We can tie an elephant to it. That's when we can feel that everyone from any country, from any place in the world, is our very own brother, our very own sister. So this is the other half of the equation, which has to be understood. Otherwise, it seems negative. It seems a little bit too negative that we constantly go around and feel that we can't trust other people, that we're afraid to have our attachments and everything. Swamiji didn't like that. Thakur didn't like that either. But, as I say, the very bitter medicine that we take in the beginning, and we understand that there's nothing ultimate and absolute and final about it, that it's really meant to lead us to this other idea that no one is a stranger, everyone is our very own. So we make this transition in being a stranger in a strange land, wearing a strange dress, to feeling that the whole world is our own and that everyone is our near and dear relative. So this is how we can utilize this idea of spiritual alienation. And I want to close by reciting one verse. It's a verse that you may not know the whole verse, but almost everyone will know the last few words of it. Is quoted constantly. It comes in a few different forms, and the form that's found in the Maha Upanishad is engraved in the entrance hall of the Parliament of India. A very famous thing. Ayam bandhur, ayam neti, ganana lakhuchetasam, udara charitanam tu vasudhaiva kutumbakam. Small-minded people think, one is my friend, the other is a stranger, but the noble-minded feel the whole world is my whole family. So let us sit now for a few minutes.